confidence or ability in. So, for example, someone could lack the confidence to build friendships or lack their confidence in making friendships. So, an example could be maybe someone's sitting with their friend and they're watching comedies, and your friend makes a comment, you know, I don't like comedies, they're stupid, right? And then instead of taking into consideration that, okay, well, my friend probably just doesn't like comedies, you automatically assume that they're saying that they don't like your taste in TV and they don't like you. You see how that goes with insecurities? I mean, it can get that far. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to be that example. It can be the same thing with your outfit, right? Someone makes a comment about your outfit, and because maybe of some insecurity you may feel that you do the same thing. It's like you're assuming, okay, what, you don't like my taste in clothes? Right? But really, everybody, a person with self-control would actually stop and consider, okay, everyone has different likes and dislikes. That's a part of our different personalities, right? There's as many different personalities as there are people on the planet. Okay? All right. Okay. Another thing is insecurities can also lead to jumping to conclusions. Sometimes anger comes from jumping to conclusions, okay? And that just means we're simply arriving at a false belief without gathering all the facts. Jessica, what did we talk about last week about a character trait that had something to do with gathering all the facts? Educated. Educated.
That's I was going there next.
Educated. Sometimes jumping to conclusions, insecurities can lead us to jump to conclusions about, and we're not displaying that positive character trait of getting educated, gathering all the facts, making sure they're correct before we make a decision, right? Okay. So I want you all, tell me what you see.
A bunch of stuff.
A bunch of stuff? Like what? Tell me what you see.
I see an old person. I see two people inside the place, and I see somebody that looks like they're kind of in the ear. Looks like a couple, you know. What's all going on here?
A lot going on here.
I see a visit at the top of the building.
Yeah, it's like, okay. So on one part we have two old people, right? And then there's like a couple in the middle, you know, their background. But then upon closer inspection, like what you just said, you have two people playing music. You have a curtain here, it's like a doorway here, and another doorway here, and then you see a person in the ear. Okay, so what was my point? You're probably wondering, okay, what was the point of that?
Well, probably that somebody can first look at this, like, that is an old person, and then without being educated and looking at the whole picture, they're not going to work.
Right. That has something to do with jumping to conclusions and upon further inspection. So just like an optical illusion, we can see things at first glance, but once again, gathering all the facts, making sure they're correct before making a decision, it becomes clear that it is misleading. So the same way, what you choose to be angry about may not necessarily be something that you need to be angry about. And last week we talked about that phrase, hindsight is 20/20. When you actually look back on a situation and like, you know, I really overreacted in that situation, right? So that was just like how I said before, we talked about how some choices you only get to make once. That's the problem with hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20. Okay? Some choices we only get to make once. Life is not an Xbox 360 and there is no reset button. Okay? Alright. Okay. So, just like we talked about last week, it's important to keep things in perspective. Do you remember all the things that we said, how to keep things in perspective? Not making a mountain out of a molehill, right? Thinking of how you can diffuse the situation, keep things in perspective, okay? Not making a mountain out of a molehill. Do I really need to be upset about this? Is this really going to benefit me to be upset about this? Right? That's that stopping and thinking, considering your options and proceeding with the right choice. Okay? All right. So, an example of jumping into conclusions, and just for your notes if you'd like. We sometimes make assumptions based on our insecurities. So, for example, you may see two people, you may be walking up to two of your friends or two of your peers or whoever, right? And then all of a sudden you see them, right? Well, without gathering all the facts, you may assume that they're talking and laughing about you, right? Based upon your own insecurities. But if you were to so maybe you ignore them for the rest of the day or give them a cold shoulder, right? But without gathering all the facts, you wouldn't have known that there was like a really funny picture right behind you that they were laughing at. Does that make sense? Do you really see where that comes in? Okay. Alright, so next. Work it out. Work it out. Okay? Another anger trap lies in using abusive behavior as a means to resolve conflicts. Just because you are in a conflict with someone does not mean you need to have a screaming match. Right? Just because you are in a conflict with someone else. Okay? Conflicts are not excuses to become angry. Just like how we said that you make a choice to become angry. Okay? Like I said, even though it seems instantaneous, there were angry thoughts before that were fueling that feeling, right? That we chose to let get uncontrolled. Okay? So, know that conflicts are simply disagreements between two people. It just means that, okay, you're having a disagreement or someone's needs are not being met necessarily. That's all that a conflict means. And going back to what I just said, conflicts, because that's so important, conflicts are not excuses to become angry. Okay? Alright. And furthermore, anger is not a reason to shield what you're really feeling. Because you know how we talked about how anger is a secondary emotion? It's a secondary emotion. It may be you're lashing out or whatever. You're lashing out or what have you because maybe you've been hurt, right? Or maybe you feel embarrassed. So some of those primary emotions, it's not an excuse to become angry for those reasons either. Okay? So we'll get into that a little bit next week about how to effectively and peacefully communicate when you're feeling those negative primary feelings. Okay? Okay. So we may not have known it, but normally anger comes in a sequence. Okay, so it's like steps that anger kind of comes in. Alright? They may come on really fast, right? So fast that you think you may not have been thinking about something, but they really come in a sequence. So first, anger thought starts with a trigger. Like I said, a person, a situation, an experience. It starts with that trigger. Then we go to those hot thoughts. Who does she think she is? Why does she do that? How would she like it if I did that to her, him? Right? Hot thoughts comes after that trigger, that experience. Okay? So what I want you to do really quickly, okay, because this class is also about evaluating, right? So that way we can change, evaluating ourselves so that we can change the behavior. right? Because change doesn't work if you're not evaluating anything. Okay? Write down 3 of your anger triggers. 3. Something that ticks you off. Okay?
Something very specific.
Yeah. That, I mean, even in the past, if you've experienced, you know, if someone was popping a drum or something like that, and that just really turned you off. You know?
I guess that's one.
You know what I mean? Anything that before it's made you feel like, okay, she needs to stop before I do something to her. You know, her. You're not finished. Just, you know, finish up really quickly if you're almost done. Okay. Now, I want you to think about what those triggers, what thoughts those have. So we're really evaluating our thoughts that came after that, right? Okay? So this should be fairly easy. Hindsight is 20/20. You can look back at a situation and say, okay, you know, maybe I overreacted. This is what I was thinking. However, I want you now to take one of those triggers and write down what thoughts came after it that fueled you being upset about it. Does that make sense? Okay, so take a time, you know, as you're going through